The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
This has not been a fun week. There have been numerous times where I've come home and stared at this for half an hour, so depressed about things, then tried to do something constructive afterwards, and found myself blankly staring at whatever I was trying to do, even if it was something I used to find fun or interesting. Things have to change at the 9 to 5. And they will, hopefully, this Monday. But that's another story for another day. Now, let's actually move the camera and get to something a little more interesting. So this is the setup that I ultimately went with to bring some air conditioning over to where the computer is. That portable that doesn't leak as much, and the hose on top of it can go out the window over there, and this big patent fan, when it's pointing upward and not making a ton of wind noise, can blow everything this way. I'm trying to record this without getting too much wind noise in the microphone from the fan, but I don't think I'm going to succeed very well here, so that's what I ultimately did. I just have the hose indoors for now because I'm recording a few things, but I'll turn that all back on once I'm done doing what I'm going to do this afternoon. The unfortunate truth of the matter is that Tuxedo is running out of space on just about all of its major drives. SSD backup is a laptop drive, so slower RPMs and things like that. But anyways, it's not that I have too much stuff on here, it's that I'm running out of space for all the wrong reasons. Specifically, the way I designed this setup is outdated. The SSD was originally for the OS, but I have some games on there that I want faster loading times on. The drive array, H and I, is originally for data. It's redundant. I use a sync program to back up H2I, and I have a way of restoring older files if I don't make the backups as often as I should, which I've made use of over the years. However, there's game installs on there too because the SSD didn't have enough space. So, a lot of the reason why I'm running out of space is because I have games installed where they don't need to be. I don't need to back up my game installs on H to I can back up game installs on a mechanical drive to the plug-in Steam drive that I use to play Steam games on laptops. So it's no longer necessary for this system to be a self-contained unit. Plus, post-monolith. The future that Tuxedo has is as a file server of sorts with lots of drives in it. So I won't, if I can talk correctly, because of the hot summer weather. So, assuming I can take out the graphics card and go back to integrated Radeon whatever it was graphics with Windows 10 to save on power when I have this thing turned on, I'm eventually going to be in a situation where this is the backup / file server computer and I'll be able to cram it full of drives and have redundant storage that way. Until then though, I just got to make things work until monolith becomes more of a sure thing. Right now it's a gradual upgrade. At some point though I will push the button on the guts and the case and the other copy of Windows 10 for it and all that fun stuff. It's not looking like it'll be anytime soon, but I do want to gradually make my way forward with PC hardware and stop waiting for stuff. So it's time to shut this thing down and let's see what we have to play with here. I think what I should ultimately end up with, I do have an SSD to use for fast games, but I think I should have one very big hard drive that isn't backed up in the array for game installs only. That will be backed up periodically to the Steam drive, so it still gets backed up, and at the same time I can free up all that space on the data array for actual data and not be cutting it close on space because of game installs. Let's make this happen. That should be enough space for it. I had to clear off all the stuff from tinkering with speakers and tinkering with the fat bike that was sitting on the project table. Still have to declutter this place. There will be at least one more great sift trip but that's for another day. Let's get the machine over here. Another hack job SSD hookup. Look at that, it's at an angle. I'll be able to get some cables in there. So again, screw on one side, bolt on the other, just to keep it inside the holder. This isn't going to be more than a couple months to a year anyways, and the computer doesn't get moved all that much. So I would, however, like to propose that it's probably time for me to look into some kind of dedicated holder for multiple SSDs, so I can stop having to reverse engineer these 3.5-inch drive cages to handle 2.5-inch SSDs like this. Plus, I mean, the cables are gonna, well, it's gonna be hard getting those to fit in there, and we gotta redo the powering and power cabling, everything now, and it's gonna be a mess. But hopefully a temporary mess until I can get something better for these things. This is the worst lack of cable management that I've ever had in any system that I've ever had anything to do with, ever. That's not a hyperbole. This is total spaghetti. And that, folks, is why you don't want this case. One of many reasons why this case is woefully outdated. There's no way to have any cable management because that's actually the bottom of the case. No tray, no motherboard, no holes to the back where you can route the cables. It's a disaster. This design is as early 2000s as it gets. And it was a mistake for me to buy another one in 2007 or 8 when I built this thing for the first time, or used this case for the first time. But it's what was around at the time. Things have changed a lot since then, you think? And even today, I still get people asking me where they can get this case. And I will not answer any more of those questions, and I will treat them as spam. Because you do not want this case. No self-respecting computer builder in the 2010s would use something like this. And that's one of the things I look forward to on Monolith. Actual cable management options in the Define R5, as opposed to this. Fortunately, this is the last time that I will ever have to make these kinds of or can make any of these kinds of adjustments, because the power supply is running out of plugs and the motherboard is out of SATA connectors. That's it. This is what the motherboard can handle without purchasing add-on cards, which I have zero interest in doing. I also put a 120mm fan to blow towards the video card, and we put that back in to get some airflow in the bottom of the case at the very least. A little bit of positive pressure inside the case. It's probably not going to work very well because this is on the floor between two pieces of furniture, but whatever. Might as well use the fan controller for more than just one fan. Plus, it's summer, we gotta try something. Can't put something in the upstairs side compartment because of the custom cooling being near the top of the case. Fun stuff, fun stuff. Let's put it all back together and see if it still works. In terms of drives, besides Hack Job SSD in there for fast games, I also took the terabyte drive out of the Silver Bullet, the old one that already had issues. We'll see if it still has any. I want to have that as the big place for storage of game installs. It still has, like, I think it does like 80 megs a second sequential transfer, but sequential transfer speed, but we'll use that to dump all the game installs onto for slower games, or games where SSD versus mechanical drive doesn't matter as much. And put everything on there, back it up to the Steam drive, and then free up that space on the actual data array. Somehow or another, I'm very fortunate that I found a way to still keep the SSDs underneath the drives, so the heat dissipated by the drives doesn't hurt the SSDs any. Once again, Monolith is going to fix about 80% of this whenever I can finally actually build that thing. Which means the PC parts industry stops its waiting game. Hint, hint. This officially begins Tuxedo's sunset season, but does it still work? Nothing seems to be getting caught. That fan seems to be spinning. We'll leave everything cranked. Is it going to boot off the wrong drive? Is the TV even on? No, it isn't. No, it wasn't. Let's see what happens. Ooh, I see Windows. Is it the right one, though? And what are these other drives going to show up as? No desktop icons. Good. Now let's rename, reformat, rearrange everything, and see what kind of space we can save. I am unfortunately going to have to get some time together to reinstall Windows 10 from scratch. There is a system file that has gone corrupt as I've tinkered with overclocking and had all those blue screens. Something finally went bad, so some of the stability problems I've been having recently probably have something to do with that. But that will be another experiment altogether. Half the drives, no go. Putting the graphics card back in knocked half of them offline. Duh. So half the drives didn't work. I had to mess with motherboard settings. The wiring is a total disaster. I don't know where to begin, really, with this. The video card is actually warping from the wires I've been pressing against it for the last couple of years, plus gravity and all that other fun stuff. So let this be a nice object lesson in how haste makes waste. Here I was, think I could slap in 2 more drives. Unfortunately, it's better for SSDs to be on AHCI controllers, and then maybe the optical drives are IDE. And then the data drives, well, that's a toss-up. So I had drive conflicts and other assorted nonsense, and I had SSDs on the wrong kind of connector. It would be better just to yank all the wiring and make it actually somewhat respectable again. So now begins the arduous task of making that happen somehow with the limited cabling that I currently have. Much better than that 45-degree job I had earlier. Give the SSD the proper parking spot and hack job the mechanical drive whose sole purpose is to back up the main SSD, if I don't just use a plug-in drive. So again, with the bolt on one side and the screw on the other, this kind of fits into some screws that were made for some different size stuff over the top of the lower profile SSD. And it still preserves the SSDs being beneath all the mechanical drives, even though the first mechanical drive is a laptop piece of crap. Right then, still spaghetti going every which way, and that should not be between the processor and the RAM heatsink thingies. Yeah. This needs to be replaced. This needs to be replaced with a case that's actually built for this decade. Like I said, it sucks and it's outdated. You should not want a case like this. I'm mostly concerned about this mustard-colored SATA cable being a little loose. It doesn't click when you plug it in. We'll see if the drive randomly loses power. Otherwise, it should be good to put back together and then play with the motherboard settings. Biggest change is that the optical drives are now on the external controller, whereas the other drives are all on the motherboard's, well, the secondary controller, whereas everything else is on the primary. So, assuming nothing is loose down there, we should be able to set the opticals to IDE and everything else to AHCI without having any issues. Let's try again, shall we? Finally got everything going, including the AC, since it hit 92 degrees in here before I was like, okay, enough's enough, put it back on. So here's what we're starting with. SSD 31 gigs, the backup doesn't matter, that's just a backup of the SSD and some on-the-fly space, and that's it. Nothing exciting. 106 on the data drive, 111 on the extra drive, which is because I, of course, haven't been backing it up as recently as I should be because I was running low on space. So we have an SSD with 223 gigs for game installs that I want to be fast, versus, and then the games drive, which is the older 1 terabyte drive, which I removed, probably the slowest too, for games where loading times might not be so much of an issue. So let's see just what this does. Of course, this will also be backed up to the Steam drive when I plug it in over USB 3. So let's see how much space we free up. I expect the SSD to have the most free space, or the most improvement in free space, I should say. Well, several hours later, I forgot exactly how long these things could possibly take, or something along those lines. But everything's all fragmented all to heck now, as I've done so much deleting, so basically I'm defragging everything and maybe run a check disk on everything as well. But here's what we have once everything's all said and done. 130 gigs out of 240 for the SSD. Backup is the same. The data array drives now have 316 gigs free. And the games SSD is at 105 out of 223. Now the games drive is currently being defragged. Games drive is being defragged, but we have 719 out of 931 gigs. So Steam downloads can all go on this drive. This drive can get mirrored to the Steam drive for the laptops, and so the backup for this will be once in a while, and it will be off of the Steam drive. It'll be off of the portable drive. But what this does is I have some more space now for more YouTube stuff, although one of the things I need to do with the Daily Motion stuff is get things uploaded with the Classic series and then delete the folders off of here to free up that space. But it's been more recent years that have been gobbling up the space on this stuff. Mostly like 2014, 2015, especially after going HD, with how things have been in terms of what takes up the most space. But at least I'm not running out of space on all the drives at once anymore, and this is the kind of impact, and we've got room for more Steam games now. So next time there's a big Steam sale, of course I actually have to play what I buy, so not just play MMOs all the time. But this gives me a template to work with. Also gives me something to watch out with for Monolith. Keep an eye on how many serial ATA slots the motherboard has when I go to put Monolith together. Because you figure, if we go double optical, plus data array, plus games and SSD, plus main, maybe 2 SSDs, that's 8 SATA ports that we're looking for minimum. Just to maintain what I have in Tuxedo and not have it be a downgrade. There was one casualty though. Unfortunately, I lost my last Toslink cable that I was going to, I lost my last Toslink cable, so the sound cuts out. So I had to shut off the sound card and go HDMI out for the time being. That's one of the things I'll be looking at for Monolith, is whether or not I even want a sound card in the first place. Regardless though, this frees up some space, gives me a whole new approach to managing drive space with data versus programs, and it also gives me a template for when Monolith is built later on. Until next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.